This is an iHeart podcast.
What if you could decide what happens next in Lively Lewis stories? Now you can, because we're on Rifio. Rifio is the first interactive storytelling platform where you create the next season. Choose your favorite characters, pick the setting, and select the adventure. Then, at the end of each 2-minute episode, you choose how the story continues. No writing, no stress. Just pick, play, and create with us. Search Lively Lewis Stories on Rifio and start your adventure today. Welcome in, everyone, to Lively Lewis Stories.
That's right. We're back with even more awesome adventures with Levi and Ivy.
Set your storytime meter to fun and get ready to join the Lively Lewis crew.
All you need is your imagination and...
off we go!
I can't wait to see where our story takes us today.
Have you ever wanted to get more Lively Lewis in your life?
Well, we've got you covered.
Grab an adult and zoom over to livelylewisshop.com.
Or just click on the link in our show notes.
Enough about that. Let's get to today's super Lively Lewis story.
Ivy, did you remember to grab my bike helmet? Asked Levi as he wheeled his bike out of the garage. No, but it's fine. We're just riding over to Billy's house down the street, answered Ivy. You know it's not fine, replied Levi as he put the kickstand up on his bike and started to walk towards the garage. And more importantly, you know she doesn't think it's fine. As Levi walked toward the garage, he pointed at the front window where his mom was standing and pointing to her head. This was her way of reminding him that he needed his bike helmet before he went anywhere. Even if that anywhere was just 3 houses down the street. I've got it, called out Levi as he held up his bike helmet for his mom to see as he walked out of the garage and hopped on his bike. Sorry, Levi, I guess I forgot for a second how strict Mom and Dad are about things like that, said Ivy. You know, they only do it to keep us safe. I know, Ivy, but sometimes they just have to let us be kids. You know, carefree and adventurous, said Levi as he clipped his bike helmet securely under his chin. I'm fine to wear a helmet. It's not that. It's just that I feel like they don't trust us. I wonder what they were like when they were kids. Levi and Ivy waved to their mom, who was still watching them from the window as they pedaled off to see their friend Billy. I bet Mom had a lemonade stand when she was our age, except you have to use hand sanitizer before she would give you a drink, laughed Ivy as she rode along next to Levi. Good one, Ivy. And I bet Dad played soccer and baseball just like me, except he refused to ever slide because how would he ever get those grass stains out of his clothes after a game? Giggled Levi. I bet when they rode their bikes, they wore knee pads, elbow pads, and a helmet, said Ivy. Oh, no way. They would have just opted to stay inside and organize their toys in color-coded bins like they do in our playroom, replied Levi. It sure would be funny to see what Mom and Dad were really like as kids, said Ivy as they stopped in front of Billy's house. Funny for sure, but I'm not thinking it would be very much fun, said Levi, hopping off his bike and tossing his helmet on the front lawn of Billy's house. Let's go play, and make sure you're being super safe and careful and avoid those grass stains. Oh, I will, and I'll be sure to triple wash my hands before we have any snacks and keep my voice down if we're having fun and laughing too much, because we wouldn't want to disturb the whole neighborhood, giggled Ivy. Levi and Ivy ran off to play for the afternoon, getting into typical harmless kid mischief, but all the while hoping their mom wouldn't happen to be taking a walk through the neighborhood and see them. It's very important to know that Levi and Ivy loved their parents more than anything, but sometimes they felt that they were just a little too overprotective, always wanting to make sure they were safe, clean, and not too loud. But all parents are like that, always wanting the best for their kids. And that means watching over them and helping them avoid mistakes that could get them hurt, in trouble, or covered in grass stains. But what Levi and Ivy sometimes forget is that their parents weren't always parents. Their mom and dad were kids once just like them. And although it seems like a long time ago, you never forget what it's like being a kid. Having the whole world to explore, being silly and adventurous, innocent and curious, and feeling like anything was possible. The afternoon went on, and Levi and Ivy had a great time playing with their friend Billy. But it was time to go home. They both made sure they had their bike helmets on before they headed off, and were lucky they did, because both their parents were outside doing some yard work when they turned into the driveway. Hey kiddos, we knew you'd be here any second because we could hear you from all the way down the street, said Levi and Ivy's dad. You two have to be just a little bit quieter. Not everyone in the neighborhood wants to hear your conversation about which animal would win a race. A cheetah with a jetpack or a greyhound with a turbo booster. Okay, Dad. Sorry, whispered Ivy to be funny. And it looks like you didn't get too messy playing today. That's good, added their dad as he spotted only a few dirt stains on Levi's shorts. I guess that will come out in the wash. I mean, at least it's not grass stains, laughed Levi, interrupting his dad. If you were a superhero, Dad, your biggest enemy would be Dr. Grass Stains. Ha ha, very funny, Levi, smiled Levi's dad as he went back to cleaning up the front yard flower beds. And you two made sure you washed your hands before having any snacks at Billy's house, right? Asked Levi and Ivy's mom as she cut some flowers to bring into the house. Levi and Ivy just looked at each other and smiled. Actually, they're having a problem with their plumbing today, so there was no running water in the house, started Levi, trying not to laugh. Yep, we just wiped our hands on some squirrels we were playing with before we had a snack, said Ivy, trying to hold back her giggles. They didn't seem to mind, and they didn't look too dirty, so I think we should be okay. Very funny, you two. You know your dad and I are just trying to protect you and watch out for you, said Levi and Ivy's mom. Is it so bad that we want you to be clean and safe? No, Mom, it's not that at all. You guys are the best, and we know you're always looking out for us, but sometimes it seems like you care more about that parent stuff than about us just having fun and being kids, said Levi. Levi and Ivy's mom and dad stopped what they were doing and turned to look at their kids. They both had a look on their face that said, I'm sorry you feel that way, and yes, we remember when we were your age, and our parents did the same thing. We understand how you feel, kids, started their dad. We were your age once. That's right. We had fun, went on epic adventures, got our clothes dirty, and got into kid mischief. But now that we're parents, we see why our parents were always right there watching over us, added Levi and Ivy's mom. She's right, said Levi and Ivy's dad. And sometimes I wish they had been watching over me a little bit more, because it turns out juggling eggs on my parents' new rug, because my best friend and I were practicing to join the circus, was not the best idea I ever had. So once they found out, I spent the rest of the day scrubbing egg goop off the rug. Not fun. Levi and Ivy laughed at their dad's story, imagining him juggling eggs and watching them smash all on the new rug. We learned from our experiences growing up, and now we do the things we do to help you out, added Levi and Ivy's mom. But Mom, that's just it. If you're always watching over us, then we'll never have our own experiences, said Levi. And if we don't have our own experiences, how will we know what to stop our kids from doing? Giggled Ivy. Good point, said their dad with a smile. But for now, why don't you two go inside and play for a bit while we finish up out here? We'll have dinner in a couple of hours. So Levi and Ivy ran off to try and find something fun to do. That immediately led them to their playroom and their game closet. Having been outside for most of the afternoon, sitting down and playing a board game sounded like a great idea. But all the games that they took out were the ones they had played many times before. Then suddenly, when they thought there wasn't another game left in the closet, Levi turned around with a dust-covered game box in his hand. What's this? Asked Levi as he walked over to Ivy, who was sitting on the floor. I've never seen that game before, she replied. But the box reminds me of those funny pictures Mom showed us when she was a kid. You're right. All those neon colors and squiggly lines and shapes, said Levi. It looks, what was the word Dad told us he would say all the time when he was a kid? Rhythmic? No. Radiant? No, I remember now. It's radical, giggled Ivy. Totally radical. Levi giggled back as he put the board game box down on the floor and sat with Ivy. I bet it's one of Mom or Dad's old games that they snuck in here and forgot about. I think we should give it a try, said Ivy, opening the box and taking out the game board, which was covered in the same 90s style patterns and bright neon colors. Sure, let's play, replied Levi. Maybe it will teach us a little bit about what it was like to be a kid in the 90s. And boy, was Levi right. The game was called Totally Tubular Time Travelers. Just the name alone made Levi and Ivy laugh. They felt like it was a totally different language and couldn't imagine words like that ever being cool or in style. As they looked at the game board, they saw trails that led from one side to the other. Like lots of game boards they had played on before, but this game board was a little different. This game board had a center circle with the words, "Place your hands here," printed on it. The spot looked like a TV screen, and they thought maybe the electronics in the game were still working, so they gave it a try. There's no instruction, said Levi. I'm sure they got lost a million years ago when this game was cool. So let's just put our hands in the middle and maybe we'll figure it out from here. I think that's a good plan, added Ivy. I'll press this on button first to see if it even still works. Ivy then pressed the little button marked on and the game board buzzed and whirled to life. This all of a sudden became a lot more interesting. Levi and Ivy smiled at each other as they put their hands in the center of the board, and that's when something unexpected happened. In the blink of an eye, the game board glowed with a bright neon light, and in an instant, Levi and Ivy were transported out of their playroom and into a world they had never seen before. Things looked similar, but not exactly as they did in their normal lives. That is until they heard two voices that sounded kind of familiar. Levi and Ivy were still holding hands when they opened their eyes after the bright neon light faded away. Where are we? Asked Ivy, frantically looking around to see they were in a park that kind of looked like the one by their house, but not exactly. I don't think Mom and Dad would like this. Totally right, answered Levi. And that's when they heard someone shout something from behind a giant metal slide. It was the voice of a little boy. Levi turned to Ivy and motioned for them to go and check it out. Maybe that kid could help figure out where they were and why they were there. Okay, watch this, said the little boy as Levi and Ivy got closer. I bet you 2 Capri Suns that I can slide down this slide standing up. No way. You'll fall before you make it halfway, said the little girl he was talking to. But I do love Capri Sun juice boxes, so I say go for it and prove me right. Levi and Ivy could see it wasn't the best idea, so they shouted out that the little boy should stop before he got hurt. Wow, they sound just like our parents, laughed the 2 kids as the little boy started down the slide, tumbling halfway down as he lost his balance. You're okay, shouted the little girl. Now, since I won, I want those juice boxes. We'll have to grab them from my house, said the little boy. Don't you worry, you'll get them. But for now, I'd like to figure out who those 2 kids are. That's when the little boy walked over to Levi and Ivy and said hello. Hi there, I'm Eric, and this is my friend Alexa, said the little boy with a smile. Hi, replied Ivy. That's funny. Those are our parents' names. I'm Ivy, and this is my brother Levi. And that slide stunt you just pulled could have ended with you getting really hurt. I'm thinking maybe you shouldn't try that again. Eric and Alexa just looked at each other, totally shocked at what they were hearing. Oh, for sure. I definitely won't try that super fun trick again. Not, laughed Eric as he high-fived Alexa. Don't be so overprotective. We're just having some fun, added Alexa. Ivy and Levi couldn't put their finger on it, but they felt like they knew these 2 kids. But given what they had just been through, they didn't think so much about it at that point. They were a little more concerned with the fact that they had just been transported to an alternate reality through an old board game from the 1990s. Hi, I know this is going to sound weird, but can you tell us where we are? Asked Levi. That is a weird question. Shouldn't you know where you are? I mean, you got here by yourselves, right? Where were you going? Asked Alexa. That's just it, answered Ivy as she went on to tell the 2 kids what had just happened to her and Levi. Wow, that sounds totally radical, exclaimed Eric. I wish something cool like that would happen to us. Totally radical, said Ivy, sounding kind of confused. Don't you mean super, Eric? No, I mean it's radical. You know, awesome, great, fantastic, said Alexa. It's just funny because we've only ever heard our parents say totally radical before, said Levi. You know, it's because they were kids in the 90s. Yeah, just like all of us, said Eric, sounding more than a little confused. What do you mean, just like all of us? Asked Ivy. It's not 2024? I guess it could be if you were some kind of time traveler, answered Alexa. But here it's just good old 1995. Levi and Ivy could have not been more shocked at what they were just told. The game they found was magic, and that game had sent them back in time. I guess this all makes sense, since the name of the game is Totally Tubular Time Travelers, said Ivy as she sat down on a nearby swing to think about how she and Levi were going to get back home. Levi, on the other hand, thought Eric and Alexa were super fun and was ready to play regardless of the year. Levi, come on, what are you doing? Asked Ivy. We kind of have a big problem on our hands. Well, you know what we say when we're having a problem with something? Asked Alexa. We say, talk to the hand. It's kind of like what you would say when you don't want to hear what's being said. That's so funny, Levi. Mom just said that to me the other day when I kept asking her to buy me some ice cream on the way home from soccer practice, said Ivy as she took a closer look at Alexa and suddenly realized where she knew her from. Alexa, did you get that little scar on your chin when you fell in your driveway running on ice on Christmas Day? Asked Ivy. Levi heard his sister's question and walked over to get a look at the scar. Once he saw it, he was shocked. Yeah, how did you know that? Asked Alexa. I had gotten a new sled for Christmas, and I slipped when I ran outside to go sledding. Ivy looked at Levi, and Levi looked at Eric. Eric, do you by chance play on a baseball team called the Silver Sluggers? Asked Levi, already knowing the answer. Wow, how did you know that? You really are time travelers, exclaimed Eric, sounding excited. That's when the four kids figured out that Eric and Alexa were actually Levi and Ivy's parents, just in kid form. I'm bugging out, said Eric, but in a good way. This is amazing. What does bugging out mean? Levi asked as Alexa told him it was the 90s way of saying you're panicking. But regardless of who was bugging out, they all knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and they couldn't stand around and let it slip away. I mean, how many times do you get to go time travel and hang out with your parents when they were your age? Since we don't know how long we have together, we better show you as much of the 90s as we can, said Eric. I have some extra bikes at my house. We can head over there and we can show you around. Sound good? Levi and Ivy nodded their heads, really excited for the amazing adventure ahead. Alexa and Eric jumped on their bikes and slowly rode along as Levi and Ivy walked beside them. Hey, wait a minute. Where are your bike helmets? Asked Ivy. Bike what? Replied Eric as he took a little bag of cookies out of his pocket. Would you guys like one? Sure, but I don't have any hand sanitizer with me, replied Levi. Do either of you? Hand what? Asked Alexa. It sounds like you're speaking another language. Just wipe your hands on your shorts and take a cookie. I can't believe what I'm hearing, said Levi to Ivy with a big smile. Once they reached Eric's house, he grabbed 2 extra bikes from his garage, and they were off. But Levi and Ivy noticed some very interesting things. Eric just quickly yelled to his parents that he was headed out again for the afternoon and would be back later. They shouted back a list of things like, be careful, watch for cars when you're riding your bike, and something about being home by the time the streetlights came on. That seemed kind of late, but Levi and Ivy just went along with it. They followed Eric and Alexa, no bike helmets in sight, and rode to a little wooden area next to the park where they worked on a fort that Eric and Alexa had been building for weeks. It housed some of their most prized possession, like their priceless Beanie Baby collection, Eric's Furby, Alexa's Bop It game, a pair of moon shoes, and a bucket full of Pogs. This stuff is pretty cool, said Levi. A little different than the video games, smartphones, and tablets we have, but still pretty cool. Wow, phones are smart in the future? Like robots that can do everything for you? Asked Alexa. Kind of, said Ivy, but kids still have to make their beds and do homework. Aw, man, that stinks, said Eric. They continued to work on the fort and talk about all kinds of things. Then everyone started to feel a little bit hungry. Eric had grabbed a bag of popcorn when he ran inside his house earlier, and they all enjoyed a snack as they explored the park. Their fun kid adventure led them to some muddy puddles, which of course they had to jump in. First Eric, then Alexa. Come on, Levi, Ivy, you're next, said Alexa. You mean you want us to jump in these muddy puddles? Asked Ivy, forgetting for a minute who was talking to her. Of course, said Eric, splashing mud everywhere. It's so much fun. So we don't have to worry about getting our clothes dirty? Asked Levi. No, that's our parents' problem, giggled Alexa as she hopped into a big puddle with both feet. Levi and Ivy didn't ask any more questions and jumped into the muddy puddles too. They were having an amazing day. As the afternoon went on, soft shades of red and purple stretched across the sky, letting Levi and Ivy know it was getting late. The sun began to set, and the streetlights that lined the road to Eric's house turned on one by one. That's our sign to head home, said Eric. It was great getting to meet you both, said Alexa. And I guess we'll see you again. This day was totally radical, said Levi. Thank you for showing us a bit of your childhood, added Ivy. Oh yeah, before we go, Eric, I have some advice for you, said Levi. If someday soon you and your best friend are thinking of joining the circus and you want to practice juggling eggs on your parents' new rug, don't do it. Unless you don't mind cleaning up broken, gooey eggs for the rest of the day. Levi laughed as Eric gave him a thumbs up. I wonder how he knew I wanted to join the circus one day, said Eric to Alexa. And as they were saying their goodbyes, the streetlights that Levi and Ivy were standing under began to glow in a bright neon color. Levi and Ivy knew right then that it was time to go home. They waved goodbye one final time to the kid versions of their parents, and before they knew it, they were back in their playroom. The game board sitting in front of them was still on, but it quickly buzzed one last time and turned off. They sat stunned for a minute or two, not believing what had just happened. Then they hurried to put the game board back in its box, return it to the playroom closet. We need to go see Mom and Dad, Levi and Ivy said together as they ran to the kitchen. Oh, good timing. We're ready to eat dinner, said their mom as she set out some plates. Just make sure you go and wash your hands. Levi and Ivy giggled, thinking of their mom eating cookies and popcorn that day without using so much as a drop of hand sanitizer. They hurried back to the table, eager to talk to their parents about what it was like when they were kids and see if it matched up with what they saw that day. So, Mom and Dad, did you guys ever make forts when you were younger? Asked Ivy. And as she asked the question, both she and Levi could see a light in their parents' eyes, a glimmer of nostalgia, as they remembered all the good times they had together when they were young. Running through the day without a care in the world, knowing they had a loving family to protect them, and seemingly endless adventures around every turn. That is a great question. We loved building forts when we were younger, said Levi and Ivy's dad. I always kept mine stocked with my favorite toys. Like moon shoes and pogs? Asked Ivy. Yeah, exactly, answered their dad. How do you even know what those things are? Oh, one of our teachers was talking about them the other day in school, said Levi, just telling us about when she was a kid. Well, I know it will surprise you to hear this, but when we were kids, not as many people wore bike helmets, said Ivy and Levi's mom, and no one carried around hand sanitizer, so I made sure to go home and wash my hands before I ate anything. Sure you did, Mom, said Ivy, looking at Levi with a smirk on her face. We totally believe you. Then from that moment on, Levi and Ivy's parents couldn't help but fill in the rest of the dinner conversation with stories of their childhood. They all laughed as they realized in that moment that they understood each other better than they thought. As parents now, Levi and Ivy's mom and dad had a different role to play than when they were kids. Now their job was to watch over Levi and Ivy and make sure that they were always safe and protected. But they knew there would be times that their kids would need to make decisions on their own. And thankfully, they were confident that Levi and Ivy would always make the right choice because they taught them well. And Levi and Ivy always knew that no matter how many times their mom reminded them to wear a bike helmet or their dad asked them not to get too dirty, that they were doing it because they loved them so much. But after that dinner and all the talk about when they were all kids, Levi and Ivy's mom and dad started to let their kids make some decisions for themselves, allowing them to gain experience and independence, but always being there to hold their hand if they needed it. Thanks, Mom and Dad, said Levi. This dinner and all your fun stories were totally radical, shouted Levi and Ivy together as they thought back on the amazing day they spent in 1995. Hey, friends, why don't you go and ask your mom and dad about their favorite things that they got to do when they were little? Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the story and learned a little something too.
And since we know everyone has their own story, we'd love to hear yours.
If you have an idea for a Lively Lewis story, leave a comment on our Apple Podcast review page with 5 stars, your idea, and your little one's name.
Then maybe our next adventure will be with you.
Until our next Storytime Hangout.
Thanks for listening. We can't wait to share another fun Lively Lewis story with you.
This is an iHeart podcast.